Get ready for the latest NFL info you need to know. NFL Insider starts now.
Everyone, today's cast is Jim Trotter, Mark Dominic, and yes, that's me, Field Yates, and franchise tag season rolls along. Let's get to some news that comes via Fox Sports, in which we now know that the Broncos plan to decline the option on left tackle Russell Okung. Jim, should this be a surprise?
No, not at all. If you look at the area that they want to address going into this offseason, most prominently is that offensive line. You know, the way that contract was structured, it makes it very easy for them to get out from under it. You know, Mark can address that more going forward. But no, this isn't a surprise at all. They are going to focus on upgrading that line because they feel they have a defense that can still win a championship. And if they can protect those quarterbacks, whichever one they go with, Simeon or Lynch, then they have a chance to compete for a championship.
Of course, it's always financially driven, Mark. So what exactly was Denver debating between in terms of keeping Okung or declining these final 4 years of his options?
Yeah, they had a big $8 million roster bonus standing right in front of them. And I think that's one of the things when you look back at this Russell Okung deal and you say there wasn't a lot of protection in there for the player. Don't forget, this is a player that negotiated his own deal, and this was a big debate last year of whether he should have an agent help him through this process or do it yourself. But this comes back to why you would have liked to have somebody kind of giving you a little bit more protection to make it a little bit more difficult decision for Denver. Not a hard decision today. Certainly Russell Okung will be back out in the market and be able to kind of really finance and find, I think, really a better fit and maybe a better deal.
Not a particularly deep left tackle class in free agency, which should go well for Okung going forward.
Well, you've got to be careful here, too, not to get caught up in the name. You have to go back and look at the tape and look at the performance. And that's where bad teams get into trouble, where they hear a name, they think about his past performance, and they think we can plug him in and he can do the same thing. Not always the case.
In Tampa Bay, it's words that are making news as quarterback Jameis Winston addressed a group of 3rd through 5th graders at Melrose Elementary School in St. Petersburg, Florida on Wednesday, spending time working to encourage the children, amongst other messages, that they can do anything they set their minds to. But it's his choice of words that suggested young ladies should be silent that has generated conversation today. The video of Winston's remarks, courtesy of the Tampa Bay Times, is as follows.
All my young boys, stand up, man. The ladies sit down. Sit down. But all my boys, stand up. Stand up. We strong, right? We strong, right? Okay, all my boys, just tell me one time. I can do anything I put my mind to. A lot of boys don't supposed to be soft-spoken. You know what I'm saying? One day y'all gonna have a very deep voice like this. Right now y'all talking like this. But one day y'all have a very, very deep voice. But the ladies, they supposed to be silent, polite, gentle. But my men supposed to be strong. Okay, so I want y'all to tell me what the 3rd rule of life is. I can do anything I put my mind to. Scream it.
Winston has subsequently issued the follow-up statement. I was excited to spend the afternoon with the children and inspire them to succeed in school, dream big, and achieve anything they put their minds to. I was making an effort to interact with a young male in the audience who didn't seem to be paying attention and didn't want to single him out, so I asked all the boys to stand up. During my talk, I used a poor word choice that may have overshadowed that positive message for some. I love interacting with kids of all ages and will continue trying to find ways to make a positive impact in their lives. Now, Mark, you previously served as the GM of this franchise. If you were now sitting in that chair again, how would you handle these remarks made by Jameis?
Well, number one, I think you have to take the context of what actually was going on there. Jameis, from what I know, actually was going to that elementary school on his own accord. It's something that you look at the past performance of the player, meaning since he's been drafted by Tampa Bay, and I live there, and I was very hard on Jameis coming out of the draft in terms of being concerned about character and everything like that. That being said, I live in Tampa, and I've watched Jameis in Tampa. And I've watched him go to schools. I know he's involved in juvenile diabetes, and he's done everything he can to be a positive impact role model for young kids. He does a lot of school speaking. So, yes, he absolutely used poor choice of words. He knows that, and he owned it, and I think that's the critical part. So for me as a general manager, it's done. Like, it is what it is, but it's not going to stop me from wanting to put Jameis back into school because I do know that he's positively impacting young kids.
You know, my thing here is, look, his comments, if you know Jameis, he's not a malicious person in this regard. And those comments were not intended to demean young girls or women. He made a poor choice of words. He has owned that. The disappointing thing to me now is that In our society today, we're so quick to say you've got to take a side on this. Right. And you have people who want to crucify him, and you have people who say he didn't mean it the way it was intended or the way that it was said. And now we lose out the possibility of a teachable moment to discuss something that's very serious about, wanting our young ladies to aspire to be all that they can be. So that's where I'm disappointed in this thing, because I've already heard from other female colleagues in the business who have said to me, why didn't you go after him harder? Well, I didn't go after him harder from this standpoint. I don't believe it was malicious. I think if you watch that videotape, if you know Jameis, he's kind of goofy. For lack of a better word, he's kind of goofy. And if you listen to how he tries to motivate it and the way that he speaks, think back to when he was in the locker room and he talked about, we're not puppies, we're dogs. That's Jameis. That's the way he talks. That's how he tries to connect. So to say now that he was trying to put down young girls or tell them not to aspire, I just don't buy it from watching this videotape.
Not the first time that Jameis's words have been in the news, and unfortunately, when you're a franchise quarterback, the microscope shines extremely refined on that player. And his nearly 40-minute session at the school also included some football talk as he declared his desire for soon-to-be free agent wide receiver DeSean Jackson to join him in Tampa Bay. I would love to have DeSean, he said, as the speedy vet is now just weeks away from the open market. Now, Jim, it's no mystery that the Bucs are looking to upgrade their number 2 receiver spot. Would DeSean be a logical target for the cap flush team to pursue?
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about one of those rare players who can take the top off of defense. There aren't many wide receivers that have the speed that DeSean has. But I will say this. People keep wondering where is he going to go. And I always say, in most cases, in these instances, follow the money. The Bucs have a tremendous amount of cap space. 2, 3 other teams that have a lot of cap space and have a needed wide receiver, the Cleveland Browns, the San Francisco 49ers, and the Chicago Bears. People say, will he go back to Philly? Philly only has, I believe at this point, they're $9 million under the cap. So if you're following the money, the likelihood is that he winds up with one of these other clubs rather than returning to Philly.
All right, Mark, this is the centerpiece of your franchise and Jameis Winston campaigning for a pending free agent. As the GM, how much influence can a quarterback or any player of magnitude have on your free agent efforts?
Well, I would say this. It's a fantastic new way to circumvent some of the rules of the CBA, having your player actually go out and campaign and lobby for I'd like the right tackle, I'd like the pass rusher, and I also would like to get Deshaun Watson or DeSean Jackson if I could. That would be great. Maybe Deshaun Watson, just not in Tampa. But when you look at that, you're a franchise player, when you're talking about big additions to your football team, it's hard to get them involved because of the way the rules are. With only a 3-day window to be able to talk to the players, and then free agency, a lot of those signings obviously happen in the first day. It's almost impossible. A lot of times it's more with the draft where you might get your players involved in terms of meeting some of the higher prospects when you bring them to your facility for them to get a feel for them. But certainly I don't think there's anybody in Tampa Bay. Now, assuming that they like DeSean Jackson, I don't think there's anybody in Dirk Cutter's office or Jason Light's office right now going, I wish you wouldn't have said that. In fact, it was a nice little message maybe sent across the bow.
Could the fact that this is not a particularly deep wide receiver class at the top actually bolster Jackson's value on the open market?
Yeah, well, I would say this. I think there's not a lot of receivers in free agency as well. I think this draft is actually very deep in the middle rounds of the draft, meaning the 2nd through the 4th round. There's a lot of good wide receivers coming out of this draft class. It may only have 2 or 3 that are going to be in the first round, top round talent, but DeSean Jackson's value, to Jim's point, is the fact that he still can take the top off of a defense. And there's not a lot of guys. It's him, it's Gary Still. There's not a lot of guys that can run as fast as he can and catch the ball consistently, and that's why this market will be strong.
And the other thing that helps him is the league is flush with cap dollars right now, so he will have an opportunity to cash in.
His recruiting pitch to Tampa Bay could be this. Listen, I had 4 catches of at least 50 yards on my own last season. The Bucs, as a team, were the only team in the NFL without a 50-yard catch last season. Time now for some press coverage, and the countdown is officially on as the Dallas Cowboys will play the Arizona Cardinals in the Pro Football Hall of Fame game at Canton, Ohio. The game will be Thursday, August 3rd for the first time. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones and former Cardinals quarterback Kurt Warner will be inducted into the Hall on Saturday, August 5th. This all presumes, of course, the playing surface is suitable. And from Matt Venzel of the Minnesota Star-Tribune, Rick Spielman said the Vikings are still deciding what to do with Adrian Peterson, but no matter what, Peterson will always be a Viking.
Ooh, that sure sounds like a comment that they may be preparing to move on. And what's interesting is look at Adrian's tweets where they've been kind of cryptic about watching other teams.
On Wednesday, 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick met with new head coach Kyle Shanahan and GM John Lynch, a meeting Lynch later described as a really positive discussion. Here's more from his interview on KNBR AM in San Francisco.
I would characterize it as just a really positive discussion. I think we from the start, Kyle and I have committed. I was a player once, and you just want to be honest. You want people to be honest with you, and so we committed to doing that. We also committed to, what we talked about in between us, and so, I'm not talking, out of both sides of my mouth because I say, hey, we're going to be transparent. But I do think that there's some things that are sacred. We had a great discussion, and I think Colin left excited. We left excited, and I think as Kyle and I really believe that the evaluation process is still very much fluid. And we've only been on the job a couple weeks, and I can tell you that we both really very much enjoyed being around Colin, and he seems like he's in a real good place.
Jim, the ball is first in Kaepernick's court to decide whether or not to void his contract. So does this meaning really amount to anything regarding his future?
No, not really. Look, the reason he restructured his contract last year was to make sure that he had control of his future. So now he can decide to opt out in that first week in March, which he is expected to do. If he did not opt out, or if he does not opt out, what happens then is the 49ers control his future. And by that, they could keep him on the roster all the way up through training camp and then decide they don't want him anymore, and he's stuck. He does not have an opportunity to win a starting job with another team and may find it hard to land with another team. So it's in his best interest at this point to opt out.
So, Mark, if he does opt into this contract, what Jim mentioned, basically the team then assumes the control. So how long do you keep Colin Kaepernick around if you don't view him as your starter for 2017 or going forward?
Well, if you don't view him as a starter or not anything up to that point, then there's no point of keeping him around up to when you get to March 9th. But you can certainly terminate it sooner if you see that you want to. Now, I would sit there and say this. Listening to that entire interview, which John Lynch did for about 18 minutes, he talked about the number one goal for their organization, he and Kyle Shanahan, is to improve the quarterback position and play. They already had Colin Kaepernick there, so basically you're telling everybody we're moving on. And just because they came out of a meeting excited doesn't mean that Colin Kaepernick's excited to start his new career and they're excited to go find another quarterback. And they both can walk out of the meeting excited. But if you read the tea leaves, that certainly sounds like two people that are going in different directions, albeit it was a positive meeting. I think they probably just wanted to have that one-on-one meeting with the quarterback out of respect to let them know what direction they want to go.
And here's the other thing. The two words you hear most out of that organization now are what? Culture change. The quarterback is the face of your franchise. Colin has been there now for a while. They're talking culture change. It usually means they're going to change that position if the quarterback hasn't been successful, and Colin has struggled the last few years.
Kyle Shanahan certainly does know his quarterbacks. It will be very telling to see what he does with Colin Kaepernick. The NFL Combine starts Tuesday in Indy, where one of the drills will be the 20-yard shuttle. Standouts on the defensive line in the last few years include Joey Bosa and J.J. Watt, plus Jason Kelsey and Nate Solder on the offensive line. But the drills start next Friday with running backs, offensive linemen, and special teamers. You can catch the quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends on Saturday, and the defense on Sunday and Monday. Mark, which prospect are you most looking forward to watching to do the shuttle next week?
Yeah, when you see what obviously Bill Pulling was just talking about, it's a lot of offensive and defensive lineman drill. I'm looking at a defensive lineman, Solomon Thomas out of Stanford. He's been a guy that when you watch the tape, you get pretty excited about him. I think he's going to continue to just accelerate up the draft board into being a top 10, maybe a top 5 pick. Why do I want to watch the 20 shuttle? Because I just want to see that he can do what Stink just talked about in terms of staying low, touching the line, and exploding back out and not getting high. Because if you play with high pads at the line of scrimmage, you all know you're going to get blown out of there. So this is a guy that I'll certainly have my eyes upon.
Jim, there's another Stanford draft prospect generating a lot of buzz, and it's running back Christian McCaffrey. What are you hearing about him in league circles?
Well, when I talked to 3 GMs and another personnel person, they all said, look, the top 2 backs, the consensus are Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook. But after that is Christian McCaffrey. And they said they expect that he will go low in the first round, maybe high in the second round. But their thing with him, they said he has great vision. They said he runs tough. He's got athleticism, mobility. And they believe that he compares favorably to Warwick Dunn, is what one scout said to me. So that's a pretty good guy to be compared to. Look, he can also play as a specialist, a returner. He's got such versatility. He can play all 3 downs. He's a guy that's going to be very interesting to see where he goes and when he goes, because we do know this, and it's an interesting fact, the last white running back to go in the first round was 1992 with Tommy Vardell.
Bill Belichick was then the head coach of the Cleveland Browns.
A quarter of a century ago.
It's been a while. Our coverage of the Combine begins next Wednesday live in Indianapolis. We'll have you covered from start to finish. And time to get into a few notebook items before we go. Anquan Boldin will travel to Atlanta this weekend to continue his work with politicians.
Yeah, he and 4 other players went to Capitol Hill last November to deal with the issue of police brutality. And now what Anquan is doing is he's stumping for Representative Keith Ellison to be the DNC chair. And what Anquan said to me in a statement, he said, "I'm committed to a bipartisan approach to criminal justice reform and other important issues facing our community. I intend to continue working closely with both Republicans and Democrats committed to working together to improve our communities."
Mark, Patriots cornerback Malcolm Butler will be a restricted free agent come March 9th. Do you see a team signing him to a big offer sheet and making it difficult for the Patriots to match?
Well, yeah, that's the thing you have to remind yourself with a restricted free agency. The Patriots have options here. They could tender him the low tender, which means they would get no compensation for him, still have the right of first refusal and the ability to a match. They could tender him a second-round pick, meaning that if they let him go, they get a second-round pick, but certainly his tender number goes up. Or they could tender him a one, which I would expect is just going to be roughly over $3 million. When I think of Malcolm Butler, I think they'll tender him a one, and I think it'll be very hard for somebody else to write that deal. The only way I think you can do that deal is it's going to have to be significantly front-loaded with a lot of cap and cash involved in that contract.
Would he be the number one priority for this team this offseason?
You would have to think so, but there are teams that have money to do that, to structure it.
There are, and Hightower is probably still their biggest priority, but they will certainly, I think, put the tag on him as a first-rounder.
We now wait and see.
And now, insurance-minded speeches from Geico.
It's a common expression, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. However, what if the horse's mouth is filled with useful insurance tools? This is the exact case with the Geico app. Yes, the app is free and therefore a gift horse. However, look inside the app and behold, emergency roadside assistance, digital ID cards, bill pay. Get the Geico app. Look it in the mouth, get amazing services. Thank you.